It all comes down to a helmet, a cracked visor. He's not collapsing from exhaustion, he's collapsing from a caved-in skull. His own brother's mace did that, and the thing that makes this moment so quietly devastating is that Baelor doesn't scream, he doesn't rage. He stumbles forward, falls into the arms of a Hedge knight who isn't even sure he deserved to be saved, and the best king Westeros would never get simply stops. Now, that's the scene. But the real story? The real story is something George R.R. Martin has been telling us across decades and multiple series, and it goes like this. The men who would make the best rulers are the ones least likely to survive the system they're trying to fix. Baelor Breakspear's death in Episode 5 of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms in the Name of the Mother is one of the most important moments in the entire Game of Thrones universe. Not because of bloodshed or spectacle, but because it's the first time Martin shows us his central thesis in its purest form. Baelor is the heir to the Iron Throne. He serves as Hand of the King to his father, Daeron II. He earned his name Breakspear at 17, winning a famous victory against his uncle Daemon Blackfyre. He fought in the Blackfyre Rebellion, leading the decisive hammer and anvil maneuver at the Battle of the Redgrass Field alongside his brother Maekar. He is, by every measure, the complete package. A warrior, a diplomat, a man of conviction, and he dies defending a nobody. That's the thesis, right there. So let's unpack what's actually happening in this moment, because on the surface, Baelor joining Dunk's side in the Trial of Seven looks like a heroic gesture, a prince championing a Hedge knight. It's stirring, it's noble, but what it's really about is a man putting his entire philosophy of leadership to the test, and the system punishing him for it. You see, Baelor doesn't ride onto that field because he feels sorry for Dunk. He rides because he genuinely believes that justice must be visible, that if the crown's heir looks the other way, while a prince like Aerion Brightflame mutilates an innocent woman and then bullies a Hedge knight into a death sentence, then the entire idea of righteous rule means nothing. Actor Bertie Carvel described the character as someone who understands he needs to be feared to be effective, but would rather be loved. And that tension, that impossible balancing act, is what drives Baelor to make a choice that everyone around him knows is dangerous. Look at what happens in the moments before the trial.
If you cannot find another knight to join you, sir, then you must be declared guilty of your crimes.
Dunk can't find his seventh champion. He's one man short, and without 7 knights on his side, he automatically forfeits. He loses a hand, a foot, maybe his head. The trial doesn't even happen, and then Baelor arrives, just in time. And the dramatic effect of that arrival is undeniable, but there's a practical detail the show leaves unspoken that deepens this even further. Baelor wasn't planning to compete at Ashford Meadow. He came to watch his son Valar joust. He didn't bring his own armor. In the original novella, he has to borrow his son's suit. So when Baelor rides for Dunk, he's not just risking his life, he's doing it in borrowed armor, armor that doesn't fit properly, armor that leaves the back of his head vulnerable to exactly the kind of blow that kills him. And here's the truly brilliant part. The man who delivers that killing blow, his own brother, Maekar, not out of malice, not as an assassination, an accident. A mace to the back of a poorly fitted helm in the chaos of a 7-on-7 melee. The system doesn't need a villain to destroy Baelor. It just needs him to show up. It just needs him to care. Now, I want you to hold that idea because we're going to come back to it. Because what Martin does next, not in this show, but across the full sweep of the timeline, is repeat this pattern with such consistency that it stops looking like tragedy and starts looking like a law of physics. Good men enter the system breaks them. Think about Ned Stark. 89 years after Baelor bleeds out at Ashford Meadow, Eddard Stark stands on the steps of the Great Sept of Baelor, named with painful irony after a different Baelor, but the echo is unmistakable and faces an identical trap. Ned is, like Baelor,
I want him dead. Mother and child, both. Dishonor yourself forever if you do this.
A man who believes that doing the right thing should be enough. He discovers the truth about Joffrey's parentage. He tries to do things the honorable way.
When the king returns from his hunt, I'll tell him the truth. You must be gone by then.
He warns Cersei. He trusts Littlefinger. He puts his faith in the idea that truth and justice will protect him. They don't. Not even close. And just like Baelor, Ned isn't destroyed by some unstoppable supervillain. He's not cut down by a dragon or an army. He's destroyed by the ordinary, grinding mechanics of a corrupt system. Littlefinger's betrayal, Joffrey's cruelty, Cersei's self-preservation, Varys's pragmatism. None of these people are monsters in the way that, say, Ramsay Bolton is a monster. They're just people operating within the logic of the game, and the game has no room for a man who won't play it. But from Ned's side of the table, look at the impossible position he's in. Varys visits him in the black cells and lays it out plainly.
Tell your son to lay down his sword and proclaim Joffrey as the true heir.
So Ned does what Baelor would have done. He sacrifices his honor, the one thing that defines him, for the people he loves.
I come before you to confess my treason in the sight of gods and men.
He stands before the crowd and lies. And then Joffrey, that vindictive little monster.
Bring me his head.
The system doesn't even honor its own bargains. I mean, think about how perfectly that mirrors Baelor's dead brother. Ned does the noble thing. He sacrifices his pride for his children, and the system kills him through a boy king's whim. In both cases, the death isn't some grand conspiracy. It's almost casual, almost accidental, and that's what makes it so much worse. And then there's Robb. Again, the same pattern. Robb Stark wins every battle. He captures Jaime Lannister. His bannermen crown him king in the north. He is, by every military measure, winning. But Robb makes one decision from the heart. He marries Talisa instead of honoring his pact with Walder Frey, and the entire structure collapses, not on the battlefield, where Robb is untouchable, at a wedding feast, under the protection of guest right, one of the oldest and most sacred laws in Westeros. With a knife in the stomach from Roose Bolton and a mocking smile from Walder Frey, the young wolf, the undefeated king in the north, dies not because he was outfought, but because he believed the world would give him room to be both a good man and a king. You see the thread now, right? Baelor, Ned, Robb, 3 men, 3 generations, 3 different wars, and the same fundamental miscalculation. They assume the system will reward virtue. It never does. But, and this is the crucial thing, Martin doesn't present this as cynicism. And yet, that would be the easy reading, wouldn't it? That the lesson of Westeros is simple. Don't be good, because goodness gets you killed. But that's not what Martin is saying, because look at what Baelor's death actually produces. Look at the ripple effects. Baelor dies. His sons, Valar and Materys, die in the Great Spring Sickness not long after. The succession shifts. Aerys I takes the throne. Then Maekar, the very brother who accidentally killed Baelor, becomes king. Only adult in absolute power, risk everything because it was right. Eventually becomes King Aegon V, and Egg spends his entire reign trying to be the kind of king Baelor would have been. The line continues. Egg's grandson is Aerys II, the Mad King, the man whose cruelty triggers Robert's rebellion, the man whose overthrow creates the world Ned Stark inherits, and the war Robb Stark fights. So Baelor's death at Ashford Meadow isn't just a tragedy, it's the first domino in a chain that stretches across a century of Westerosi history. Remove Baelor from the line of succession, and you get the Mad King. You get Robert's rebellion. You get the execution at the Sept of Baelor. You get the Red Wedding. You get everything. And that's what gives Baelor's final moments their unbearable weight. When he falls into Dunk's arms and whispers that he needs good men, that the realm needs them, he's not just dying. He's describing the central problem of the entire story. The realm does need good men. It always has, but it keeps killing them. Meanwhile, from Maekar's side, the man who dealt the blow, there's no triumph. According to the chronicles, Maekar bitterly regretted Baelor's death for the rest of his life and marked its anniversary every year. His mace found the wrong skull. Maekar is not a villain. He's a soldier caught in a system that turned a family disagreement into a blood sport. And that's the cruelest irony of all. The Trial of Seven is supposed to let the gods decide who is right. The gods, apparently, decided that the best man should die. In the end, what Martin keeps showing us, from Ashford Meadow to the steps of the Sept of Baelor to the blood-soaked halls of the twins, is not that goodness is pointless. Baelor pays for it with his life. Ned pays for it with his head. Robb pays for it with everything. But each of them, in their moment of choosing, makes the same calculation, that some things are worth more than survival. Baelor could have stayed on the dais and let a hedge knight lose his hand. Ned could have kept Cersei's secret and lived out his days as a comfortable lord. Robb could have married a Frey girl and played it safe. They all could have played the game the way Tywin Lannister plays it, and none of them did. So the real question Martin leaves us with isn't, why do good men die in Westeros? We already know the answer to that. The real question is far more uncomfortable. What kind of world kills the only people capable of saving it, and then wonders why it can't be saved?